The process begins with glycolysis, where a glucose molecule is broken down into two pyruvic acids. Through this process, 2 NADH and 2 ATP are produced. Next, the 2 pyruvic acids enter the mitochondrial membrane, producing a carbon which turns into carbon dioxide as well as an acetyl-CoA for each pyruvic acid. The breaking apart of the acetyl-CoA and the other carbon produces NADH and continues into the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle, through a series of steps to later be described, produces 6 NADH, 2 FADH2, and 2 ATP. The last process to take place within the mitochondria is the electron transport. Best case scenario, electron transport will produce about 34 ATP, but most likely will produce less than 32. Throughout this process, we should receive about 38 ATP. However, in reality, we will receive about 30 to 32 ATP. In total, we will get 10 NADH as well as 2 FADH2 and a projected 38 ATP.
Glycolysis is the first step in cellular respiration and occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. A glucose molecule is present. 2 ADPs come and give one of their phosphate groups to the glucose molecule. The 2 ATPs then become ADPs. Once the phosphates from the ATP attach to the glucose, the 6 carbon molecules turn into 2 3-carbon molecules. An NADH plus transforms into NADH for both 3-carbon molecules. 2 ADPs arrive for each 3-carbon molecules and take the phosphates away to create 2 ATPs, that's 4 total. The final product in glycolysis is 2 3-carbon pyruvates.
After glycolysis, the Krebs cycle begins. As we know, glucose will break into 2-pyruvate, meaning the entirety of the Krebs cycle will occur twice. As pyruvate enters the mitochondrial membrane, a carbon will break off, creating CO2. Coenzyme A will attach to the rest of the pyruvate, creating acetyl-CoA. This process also results in the transformation of NAD+ into NADH. The joining of oxaloacetic acid will cause the CoA to break back off, resulting in a carbon dioxide. This oxaloacetate will break down again, creating another carbon dioxide, as well as transforming another NADH. Another NAD+ will transform into NADH, and then ATP will be produced from ADP. FAD will produce FADH2. Then one last NAD+ will transform into NADH. This cycle then returns to oxaloacetate. This cycle occurs twice for each glucose molecule, and that is the Krebs cycle.
The final step of cell respiration is the electron transport chain. The process occurs in the mitochondrial membrane and begins with an NADH, H+, and FADH2. The electrons from the NADH and H+ are then transferred to the electron carrier proteins, and the protons are transferred across the membrane. As the electrons move from cytochrome to cytochrome down the electron transport chain, more protons are carried across the membrane. Once the electrons reach cytochrome 4, they will then combine with hydrogen and oxygen in order to form water. One water molecule is formed for each pair of electrons. The protons transferred across the membrane through this process will then re-enter the mitochondrial matrix through ATP synthase. The energy created from the movement of protons will then be used to synthesize ATP from ADP and phosphate. This process is known as oxidative phosphorylation.